Welcome to this month's Millennial Spotlight brought to you by Lead with Intention. I'm Leslie Bosserman, executive coach and lifestyle strategist, partnering with millennial leaders and their managers. The purpose of these monthly conversations is to feature a millennial changemaker who really helps deepen and extend the dialogue around how we lead with intention. So this month, we're focusing on the intention of exploration. So for many adventurous millennials, exploration and travel, they're not just seen as a luxury. They've really become a way of life. So when we look at previous generations, millennials are 23% more interested in traveling abroad, according to a Boston Consulting Group report. Furthermore, the United Nations estimates that 20% of all international tourists, that's 2 million people, are young people. So that's a big deal when we look at millennials who are out there exploring, getting different perspectives, enhancing their worldviews. A study by Destination Analysts in July 2015, they found that 68.9, so pretty much 69% of millennial travelers in the US reported to be exploration hungry. So when you think about this concept of being really hungry for exploration, that's what we're focusing on and highlighting. So the millennials I've spoken with are really using these travel opportunities to dive deeper into self-discovery, to find clarity around their purpose and around life choices. So maybe they've gotten into grad school and they want to defer for a year, consider what their career path is going to be. They also want to experience something transformational before they settle into a career or into a family life. When I've connected with millennials from across the globe in my Millennial Leadership Project, almost every person has shared that exploration, travel, adventure, and experiencing new things is one of the top motivators, and it really defines their identity. So these are the very values that most millennials espouse around career, around freedom, around adventure, around autonomy, and around flexibility. So these are the major themes of what I call becoming a life explorer. So I'm really excited to be here with Emma Kerss, who's a millennial nomad, and she's paved her own path and embraced exploration in so many unique ways. She's going to tell you more about it and how you can live a bolder and more adventurous life. So welcome, Emma.
Hi, thank you.
So good to have you here. So tell us a little more about how exploration's really shaped your path and any specific values that have come from your own life exploration.
So my exploration really started after college. What sparked my interest in travel was a study abroad year that I did during college in Spain, which was amazing. And from there, I knew immediately that I wanted to pursue more travels after college. I didn't really know what that was going to look like. But as soon as I graduated, I jumped on a plane. I went to Australia. And the intention was that I was going to find a job there, kind of set up shop and live a normal life, but just live that life in Australia and explore Australia and experience that country as a young professional. I took 3 massive suitcases with me, and within the first month, I had met a young man who was from Canada who was doing a kind of a backpack trip and living in hostels and working, picking up odd-end jobs as he was going along. And he really opened up my eyes to this culture of exploration as far as backpacking and camping goes that I had never really been exposed to before.
So you probably didn't hang on to those suitcases very long.
No, I didn't. At that point, I was just, rearing to go. So I actually gave pretty much 2.5 suitcases full of clothing away, just donated it, got rid of all of my baggage and bought a backpack, put it on, and really just took up that lifestyle and embraced the adventure. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea how I was going to make it work, how it was going to all unfold, but I just took a leap of faith and went for it.
There's so much courage there, just that kind of boldness, that courage, that excitement. And I often look at millennials, maybe they're not on a trip, or maybe they're in their career or in their home life, and embodying that same courage and boldness doesn't feel as accessible. But when you talk about being in Australia and kind of just giving away things and going for it, like, I believe that value is still accessible wherever we are. So we're going to talk a little more about that. So after Australia, where did you go? I know you've been to a couple places on the globe.
Yep, that's right. I spent about 1.5 years in Australia. It was very much a backpacking experience, camping, living in a tent, picking up odd-end barista jobs or waitressing jobs just to fund the travels. I lived outdoors, experienced a lot of the outdoors there, which was amazing. And from there, I actually went to New Zealand for a year, where I took up a job as a hostel manager, which was wonderful. I got to meet a lot of other travelers, kind of help them on their journey of exploration around the country. So I got to know a lot of New Zealand just via that job. I ended up buying a car there in which I put a mattress and then drove around the country and lived out of my car. And from there, I have a pretty cool story about how this came to fruition. But I moved from New Zealand to China, where I spent 2 years eventually teaching as a university teacher in China. So the adventure originally started as getting a job in Australia, and that transpired into years and years of just bouncing around and letting life take me where it took me.
Yeah, and one thing I love about this, it might sound random to a listener here, but you really were taking the next right step. It's almost like this golden thread was interwoven throughout all of these experiences that led you exactly to where you are now,
Absolutely.
even.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of millennials can relate to this. They can look at their resume maybe and be like, oh, wow, I've jumped around so much, or I've done so many things, whether it's been traveling or job seeking or a combination of all of that in school. So I think there's a lot of resonance there. So when you think about the values that exploration has taught you, what are some of the top values that come to mind?
Open-mindedness is one of the major ones for me. You can't really be in a mode of exploration without being completely open-minded to what's around you, to the people that you meet, the experiences that you're having, the new food that you're trying. So open-mindedness, I think, is a definite, and also patience and persistence. There have been time after time that I've been faced with challenges throughout my travels where if I weren't persistent through that challenge, I would have just given up and flown home.
Yeah, I would say that just having that kind of spirit, I mentioned courage before too, so that spirit of being able to go there and be flexible and to be more autonomous. So you mentioned meeting other backpackers and other travelers, but that probably wasn't your intention when you set out. You just said, I'm going to have this adventure and I'm going to take it for what it is.
Yes, I very much had the intention of just kind of flying by the seat of my pants and letting life happen and being open to all opportunities that kind of came my way. So when I left for Australia, actually it was right around my birthday. My mother gave me a birthday card, and on the front of the card it said, do at least one thing every day that scares you. Mm-hmm. And I really, really tried to live by that while I was out there. Be it a small thing or a large thing, anything from, striking up a conversation with a stranger or bungee jumping, anything along that spectrum. I really every day tried to do at least one thing that was outside of my comfort zone, just for the purpose of personal growth and opening up new channels of exploration.
And that's such a good, positive challenge. I don't know if your mom meant it as a challenge or it was just a really sweet card that kind of spurred you to action.
Well, I know I told her kind of after the fact that I lived by that, and she was like, "Oh no, what did I do?
What did you get into?" And so that's
right.
But how fun to take that on and just really push the limits of your comfort zone. I often think that if we are just to push on the borders of our comfort zone, maybe not jump wildly outside, but sometimes that's appropriate and fun, and mm-hmm. sometimes not so fun. But if we were to push on those borders, how much could we really expand them?
I've discovered time and time again that I'm capable of so much more than I ever gave myself credit for from the beginning. There have been so many challenges. China is a great example. When I first moved to China, I moved from New Zealand, moved to China via a connection that I had received from someone who picked me up while I was hitchhiking in New Zealand. So I didn't know anyone in China. I was the only Westerner when I was there. For the first 3 months, I didn't know a single other person who spoke English as their native language or who was familiar with my culture. And I can't tell you how many times I sat there and, Googled flights home back to America just because of the discomfort that I was feeling being there. But again, patience and persistence, those two values, it was just something nagging in the back of my head, like, you can do this, you can do this. So kind of sticking it through and seeing it through, and it ended up being just a phenomenal experience.
It's really remarkable to be able to kind of see yourself landing in Australia with this kind of nomadic adventurer sense to landing a job at a Chinese university.
Well, and that's the beauty of it all. I love it. I have a habit of benchmarking my life by year, and I just love seeing the growth. Each year that I benchmark, it's 1 year I'm living in a tent in the outback in Australia. The next year I'm managing an 80-bed hostel in New Zealand and doing earthquake cleanup. And the year after that, I'm teaching at a university in China. Like, these benchmarks just show such immense growth, personal growth, but also just they make me really, really proud of what I've been able to accomplish within the year.
That's really remarkable. I think benchmarking is a really healthy practice. And whether it's by year or by season or by birthday, like, I really think that's a great reflective exercise. And it's fun to go back and say, wow, when I was 23, I was here, and now I'm here. And where will I be in 10 more years?
Absolutely.
So kind of setting that. So one of the things that you mentioned that really sparked my interest, because I'm a super planner. Some people have called me type AAA, not just type A. I like take it to a whole nother level. And I know how to be flexible, and I know I can like get out there and just do things spontaneously. It is not my comfort zone. I do it because it's necessary and it's good for me, but definitely not my comfort zone. So if there are other millennials who maybe are a little bit hesitant because they don't know what's next and they're afraid of what could happen or might happen, what would you tell them with regard to just getting out there and exploring, whether it's traveling or any other advice?
First and foremost, I would say just to kind of surrender to that unknown. It's hard to do, but I feel like so much of the anxiety that a lot of my peers feel around just life in general, not even travel, has to do with things that are out of their control. So just the ability to kind of relinquish that control and surrender to those feelings of facing the unknown, I think, is first and foremost in order to kind of combat that.
So how do you do that? Because that's what people will have been thinking of this. Oh yeah, just let go, just dive into it. Like, great advice. What does that look like for someone who's still a little shaky in this?
I think it's just baby steps, really. The more you do it, the more you realize you're capable of doing it. So one of the greatest pieces of advice that I got before I left was from a family friend, and I was kind of expressing nervousness to him. This is before I left for Australia. I was expressing how I felt nervous about taking on this adventure and how was it going to unfold, and I didn't know how I was going to figure it out. And he said to me, he's like, each person is a metaphorical bank, right? And every time that you face a challenge and you figure it out, that you add to your bank of figured it outness, and those accumulate over time to the point where you're just so confident that any situation you're faced with, you'll be able to figure it out. And that has proven true to me time and time again, to the point, I've been faced with multiple challenges where I couldn't see a possible outcome, but just having the faith and knowing that you always will be okay and there always is a workaround has really helped me kind of face those challenges.
Yeah, I find that really encouraging. I know a few years ago, my husband Joel and I were given the opportunity to move abroad as well and become expats in Amman, Jordan. And if you would have told me, hey, before you're 30, you're going to live in the Middle East and you're going to work in local schools, I would have been like, ha, really? Ha, exactly. I don't know about that. The same year I started my business. So it was one of those times it's like, okay, get married, start a business, move to Jordan. What? And you look at your life agenda and it may not look like perfect on paper for these opportunities, but something in your heart and in your mind is pulling you. And that's where I think your advice of just surrender, I mean, count the cost, be wise about it. Don't dive in unknowingly. But when you've committed to something, fully commit, give it your all, and let it be what it needs to be in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the messiest times of my life are the ones that have been the most teachable.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
That's a huge value in travel as well. Is I know a lot of my friends and peers when I came back, in their minds, what they saw from my Facebook or my blog, it was always very, rosy colored and pretty, right? Because you don't share the hard times that you go through necessarily. But to go into it knowing that you will face challenges, there will be times where you don't know exactly how you're going to make it work. There are times where it's going to feel so daunting that you'll want to fly home and go back to your safety zone. But just going into it knowing that you're going to experience those things and knowing that you will come through the other side and that those are the times where you're going to experience the most personal growth. I think that's part of the part of the challenge and part of the reward as well. So kind of that personal exploration, like what are your boundaries? What are you able to accomplish? How far can you push yourself? And that's not to say that you need to seek out challenges, but challenges will arise along the way. So
yeah, whether you seek them out or not, they will be there. And it's
yeah.
about how do you allow them in your life? Like so often we push them away or we're afraid of them. But what if we invited challenges in like a new friend? It would
Absolutely.
be an interesting way to look at it, right? A different perspective there.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
So when you look at your millennial peers or your friends who either have traveled or have explored in different ways or maybe are a little hesitant, tell me more about any trends that you see specific to millennials with exploration.
I think there's a big shift of focus from kind of a materialism or consumerism to experiential living. I think a lot of millennials seek out experiences. And I know one of my kind of life philosophies is that we are the sum of our experiences. So I guess I'd be a self-proclaimed experience collector, if you will. I'm constantly trying to seek out new experiences. And I think I see that a lot in my peers as well. They prefer to spend their money on going out and seeing things and experiencing things versus actually owning materialist things or a nice car or whatever.
So what's fascinating about that is when you look at the research on the science of happiness and positive psychology, they found that experiential learning and experiences that form memories that are long-lasting sustain happiness in a way that materialistic goods cannot. So we might get a new pair of shoes or even a new car, like you mentioned, and it's nice and shiny, and we take our Instagram picture and, oh, here it is. And then the happiness wears down. Whereas you can recall living in Australia, I can recall living in Jordan and eating kanafa and staying up late and watching the sunset over the rooftops. And I just am brought back there. And it's that sense of abiding happiness that really memory can call forth, which is neat. So what else have you noticed with millennials and exploration?
I think there's a little bit of societal pushback against the idea that people can go and take off a few years and go explore and take that time. I see a lot of millennials struggle with the fact that right after college, there's pressure to go get an internship or go start your career and kind of lay that foundation down. So I clearly did not choose that path. Right after college, I deviated and I went traveling for a couple of years. And that's when I first came back, I actually really struggled with the notion that I was now a few years older with quite a few years less experience than my peers. And I thought that would really hinder my ability to kind of reimmerse back into society here and back into the workforce, particularly. And what I've found is that through all of my interviews and through all my, meeting people within my career, I actually get a lot of respect from people and I've gotten a lot of exposure and a lot of opportunity because people recognize the value in world experiences. And I share some of my stories with the people that I work with, and they're just fascinated by the experiences that I've had and by the courage, if you will, that it took to go out and do some of the things that I've done. For me, it's kind of feels normal at this point, just commonplace. But when you say some of these things out loud, I'm like, oh my God, I did that. That's amazing. So one thing that I would like to encourage millennials is if they are considering or if they do have that kind of inner urge to go travel, to do it. And don't worry about kind of the repercussions of being quote unquote behind when you return, because I found that I'm not remotely behind in my career. I very much have fit right back in where my peers are. And I've gotten a lot of respect from my colleagues for what I've done.
That's really encouraging. I think so many millennials that I've talked to, especially coming out of college or maybe starting their first job, they feel like they have to prove themselves. They feel like, okay, I have to do well in this job so I can get enough experience, get a promotion, get on this career track. And so I'll travel when X happens in 5 years, or if my company offers a sabbatical, which some do, and that's incredible. So I don't think it's the norm yet, but it's looking at it and saying, how do you self-create? Maybe not 7 years, but how do you self-create even a 3-month experience, if not a year experience?
Right. And to that tune as well, I would really advise people to, if they do want to do an adventure of this magnitude, be it 3 months or a year, whatever, to do it during a transitional phase, to do it in between high school and college, or college and a career, just because having been in my career now for 2 years, I can see how difficult it would be to really kind of uproot yourself after you've laid down this foundation and you've really put in a lot of work. Just immensely difficult to leave that behind and kind of relinquish all of that groundwork that you've laid. So I would absolutely advise that people just do it during a transitional phase in between.
One of my favorite times of life was when Joel and I were traveling back from Jordan, and we realized for the first time in our adult lives, we didn't have a place to pay mortgage or rent for 6 weeks. And we realized we were in between, and we had a place to go when we returned home, but it wasn't financially burdensome. We just had this space, and so we're like, wow, we can take that amount of money. We can go anywhere. And we went from Jordan to Egypt to Greece to Italy to the UK, and we just went because we could. So that transition kind of invited us into that. And one thing to build upon what you said, I fully agree with the ease of traveling during transition. I also think there's something to be said about intentionally building out travel experiences when you're in a career, because I don't want people to think, oh, I've been 2-3 years in this career and I'm stuck. I think we assume we get stuck, but only if we allow ourselves to be. Now, that being said, an employer might not just offer you 3 months paid leave, but they might be able to negotiate a 6-week extension of vacation that's unpaid. So if you're really dedicated to it. So I just encourage anyone listening to this who has that urge to get out there and travel in whatever scope to think about what would be really realistic, both for your budget, your job, your lifestyle. I know one thing we do often is we host on Airbnb. So we'll Airbnb our house in Sacramento and we'll say, okay, where do we want to go now? So we're able to go, we're going to Belize in July.
Oh, how fun.
Just because we can, we decided, hey, our house is rented for 2 weeks, where to? And it keeps us motivated, but it also helps cover some of those hard costs of travel. So you have to get creative with it. And I know that might not be the solution for everyone, but it's a way to make travel and exploration accessible.
Exploration was obviously very easy during my time of travel, with the new culture, new food, new people. It's very easy to be in that mode of exploration while you're out there. But what I've found, and it's really interesting to me, is that actually coming back to Sacramento, I came back here 2 years ago. I am from here, so it's familiar to me. It's not new in any sense. But I've actually really approached being here with a sense of exploration. I wanted to immerse myself here and explore this city the same way that I did every other city that I lived abroad. So I've taken an entirely new approach to being in Sacramento, and it has completely expanded my horizons here. Every day, even in the, what could seem kind of mundane or routine, there's a way to kind of, implement a concept of exploration into that as well. So be it just trying a new food from your grocery store or striking up a conversation with somebody in line. I really try to embody that every day while I'm here.
In that way, exploration is a lifestyle. It's not a destination.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you look at it and it becomes part of who you are and your character, which is what we're all about, which is why we're even having this conversation, is to encourage kind of a lifestyle of exploration where you don't just wait to retire, but fulfillment is accessible now.
I completely agree. And there's so much going on anywhere that you are. It's, if you open up the paper and you just look at the events section, or you have a chat with a friend, what's going on in the city? What do you do? What are your group of friends like?
So along the lines of really exploring in your hometown or in your region, one of the ideas that I actually have to credit my undergrad at UCLA for, they hosted a dinner for 12 strangers. And I love this idea where let's say you and 4 of your friends, you come together and you say, okay, we're each going to host a dinner and we're going to ask you all to kind of throw in names, and we're going to host people we've never met and they've never met each other. So you have essentially 12 people or however many your dining table can fit. Or maybe you go to a restaurant and you just meet different people in a way that's structured enough so it's not necessarily as awkward as it might be if you're just at a mixer or at a networking event.
Right.
And it was just a neat way to kind of build some commonality. And we did it around people in the same major so we could kind of cross-pollinate. And it was hosted by an alumni who was in that field. So it was a really great way to kind of see what was possible. But it doesn't have to be structured that formally. So I share that because there's so many things we can do to be an explorer and to kind of dive deeper into that. And summer is such a great season to start some of this. So as we wrap up today, is there anything else that you wanted to highlight or share? Any last words of advice for millennials who are still kind of on the fence with taking that dive into exploration?
In regards to travel, if it's something that you just feel in your heart that you want to do, I would say absolutely do it now. Don't wait. I've seen it many times where people look back and regret that they didn't take the chance or take that leap of faith. And I actually got asked quite a few times by people, well, what happens if you get there and you don't like it? Which has always struck me as such a strange question, because there's such a simple solution. If you don't like it, then you change. You deviate from where you're at. So I would just really encourage people, if you have that in you and you have that desire, just to pursue it and just see where it takes you. It might lead to a dead end and you might come home and then you've lost nothing and you've gained the insight that you at least pursued it.
One of the themes that I'm hearing throughout our conversation is this idea of trust and this idea of courage. So trusting that you can do this, that there will be a time, whether it's kind of a shorter time or a transitional time, that you can embrace it. And then having the courage to take that first step without knowing what the outcome is. And I often talk about plan the event, don't plan the outcome.
Absolutely. Completely agree. The hardest part is getting on the airplane. That's the hardest part, getting on the airplane. As soon as you're on the airplane and you just, again, surrender to it and just let it unfold and be open to the opportunities that are presented to you. Be open to the people that you meet, the experiences that you have. And, my father used to always say, trust in God, but lock your car, right? So be safe about it, but definitely have faith that the things that you're experiencing are all for a reason, and just let them unfold and enjoy the adventure, and just embrace how it unfolds.
That's beautiful. Well, I really appreciate you being with us and just sharing so much about your story, Emma, just hearing all these places you've been and how you did have that faith to just kind of lean into that next experience and not always having to have it be perfect. And like we said, the messy parts sometimes teach us the most. So for all of those listeners who are getting more inspired by Emma's story and what we've heard today, I just really want to encourage you to continue exploring, continue to get out there and do one thing this summer that scares you, like Emma's mom championed her to do. Do something that just pushes you a little more in a direction that you want to go. And I also want you to check out leadwithintention.com. We have some different programs and services that might help you on your path of exploration and help you become one of those amazing millennial change makers that we're featuring each month. Thanks so much for being with us again. And this is Leslie Bosserman, inviting you to join the wholehearted leadership revolution as you continue leading with intention.